And we're live. It's Monday, and it's time for the Metal Lab. Yay! I am joined this week. I'm Jason, and I'm joined by Mr. Tom Kerr.
Cheers, everyone.
And out and about, Mr. J.
Hi. Sorry, I noise for a second there. I could mute.
It's all good.
Perfect timing.
A little bit of housekeeping taken care of, guys. We are this close to 3,000 subscribers. Just pop over that number. We've been sitting about 14 away from 3,000 subscribers for about 6 months. And it's one of those things. It's like we're so close. If you aren't subscribed, take a second, hit that subscribe, and if you want to get notifications so you don't have to keep your eyes on the Facebook, check that out. Or if you want to get regular notifications, check us out at facebook.com/marriedwithclix, or join our discussion group at facebook.com/group/marriedwithclix community group. That's where discussion can happen. It's our public forum for people who are fans of the channel. There is an approval process, but I'm just making sure you're not a bot, so we don't have sunglass ads all over our all over our Facebook group. So that aside, it's been a week. Last week we spent a whole lot of time on previews and some initial thoughts going into going into Worlds. Memphis is very close to around the corner.
Yeah, man.
It's dangerously close. But Tom, how's your week at HeroClix been?
Great. It actually involved a little bit of HeroClix, which is a rarity, but a pleasant one. So I played an online rock event on Friday, which was pretty fun. It was as opposed to the usual elimination thing. There were only 6 of us in, so what they did was 2 rounds of Swiss and a cut to top 2. So it's great. So I was guaranteed to get 2 games out of it, which I had a lot of fun doing, playing a little silly Earth X team that I threw together that day. They were at like 5, and I kept looking at the Discord, and they said, we need 1 more person. I'll have to cancel the event. So I'm like, I'll throw together a joke team and play in this event. And the team did better than I thought, so I wound up practicing a little more on the weekend. But I went 1-1 and learned some stuff, so that was great. And then we had a chance to get together with Jason, as well as Devin, the current Canadian national champ and local wonderkind, except because he's not that young, but local wonder guy. And
compared to us, he's young.
Yeah, that's not fair. He and Jason and I had a chance to get together at 401 Games for the last day, I guess, at its current location, and get in several practice games, which was really awesome. And one fun, casual Star Trek game that I had a chance to record, but the audio is terrible, so I have to record a little commentary for it, and maybe I'll share it if it is share quality. So yeah, that was my week. It was great.
Awesome. Jay.
I gotta go. Somebody literally just died, so sorry about that.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, my
Sorry to hear
girlfriend
that, Jay.
literally just died, so I really gotta go. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I hope people are not mad at me, but
wish you well and your family well, bud.
Yeah, best your family there, Jim.
yeah, sorry. I just heard my girlfriend crying in the other room, so I gotta go.
Yeah, go.
Talk to you guys later.
Oh, get out of here. Go be a good boyfriend.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I
and a
wish,
good person. That's
Jay and his
that's
family
priority.
and loved ones all the best. Shame to hear when these things happen. On a brighter note, as Tom said, I was involved in some practice this week. Full disclosure, I'm super rusty.
Me too.
Rusty. As I discovered during practice. Now, granted, Devin is, as he said, very, very good at this game, and is on his toes at all times, it would seem. But I'm getting a better feel for this whole cosmic thing. There's a lot more. I'm looking at a lot of the mistakes in hindsight that I made with some. There's so much minor positioning in this game that makes such a major difference now more than ever. And I think it's something I need to get it's something I used to pride myself on, and I really got to get better at. So I know my faults, and I know what I got to fix. Unfortunately, I realized just recently that I can't partake in practice this week, but we'll talk about that later, Tom.
Me neither. It turns out I have to be at Fan Expo.
Yeah, it turns out I gotta eat barbecue.
At Fan Expo?
No. I kind of give up on the Fan Expo thing. I find it way too crowded.
Agreed. If I wasn't working, I wouldn't be there, but that's for off the air.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of on the air important stuff, let's talk previews, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. It is time to get into the whole preview thing. And I gotta get this up and not that. There we go. All right.
Ooh, can I play the theme?
Do it. Give
I
us a
worked so
theme.
hard.
You
Yes,
did.
all right. You can't hear my voice, but you'll hear my keyboard for just a moment. In 3, 2, 1, switch.
Great way to lead into Archangel as the first preview from the
It's
X-Men
an
animated set. Tom,
animated series. You got to do it.
I love it, Tom. Thank you. I love your musical acumen, your beautiful voice. Oh, God, I got to start paying you some actual money.
Nonsense. Let me earn it first. Let's
All
talk
right.
Archangel.
Let's talk Archangel. Archangel has the X-Men and celebrity keyword, oddly enough. Ignores characters for the purposes of movement. His first trait, obsession. You're my obsession. And the subject of 90s stuff. At the beginning of the game, choose the opposing character with the highest point value. At the beginning of your turn, if Archangel is within range and line of fire of the chosen character, note Archangel's current click number and turn him to click number 11. If you do this turn when making attacks, he can only target the chosen character, and at the end of your turn, return him to the noted click number. Second trait, nothing can take away my desire for revenge. When Archangel moves at least 5 squares in a direct path, he can use Sidestep and Energy Shield Deflection until your next turn. He's a 100-point dial with 5 range, flies, Indomitable. That last click is 11 movement with Charge, with 12 attack with Super Strength, 16 blank defense, and 4 damage with Battle Fury. He's a more range-focused figure throughout the rest of it. Tom, what do you think of Archangel?
Well, the first thing out that I have is a question, the usual question here. If there is more than one character that is tied for the highest point value, can you select one of them? I guess.
I wish Jay was still here.
Yeah, it's just kind of straight, like it as opposed to saying choose, an opposing character with the highest point value, or whatever. It's the opposing character. So if there isn't one, I know that sometimes you've just not been able to choose. And if you can't choose, like it's a mixed blessing, really. That particular click. For a few reasons. One is that your opponent can kind of use it against you. If your opponent is going to be more potentially harmed by the running shot Psychic Blast than they are by the charge Battle Fury, even with the super strength, then it's totally within their best interests to get within range of Archangel in order to kind of force him onto that click during his turn. It also is especially bad if they have some way of dealing him damage on their turn. Now, I don't know of really any effect besides Mystics, and if it's Mystics, you just have to be careful not to do it. But it does make it pretty hard. Archangel's got to basically play keep away against a Mystics character, so that's a bit nasty. However, other than that, certainly I think there are some benefits as well to being able to grab, super strength with Battle Fury and that kind of huge attack value. That's great. I think that he's cool for 100 points. I think that he's particularly well suited to this set. We're going to get in this a little bit later when we start talking about teams, but I didn't know this. Spoiler, I did not know this was the set for teams. And when you told me that on the WhatsApp, I kind of lost my mind because it completely kind of changed my viewpoint on the whole thing. And I will talk about this more later, but this is going to be a set where dealing damage is extremely important, and there is a ton of damage reduction on the figures that we're going to be seeing a lot of in the team sealed and just regular sealed setting, which is the colossals and stuff. Well, tons of them have traditional damage reducers of the impervious and vulnerable nature. So Psychic Blast goes a long way. He's got great range. I love the fact that he can automatically break away thanks to ignoring characters, so as to make sure that he's always, his hypersonic always works. His running shot gives him the chance to get that penetrating damage when he wants it. And when his, highest point character is close by, he can always charge at them even when he's locked down. So that's all great stuff. And I love the fact that he gets ESD and sidestep for just moving. So that's great. But I'm a little not. I think 100 points is a bit rich for it in any setting other than sealed.
Yeah. To add on, there's a couple people in the chat, and Emily is in there, and she's the queen of the Shredder clone in our department.
Right.
Noted that if there was 2 lowest point characters, there is no lowest point character. So
that was what I thought. Yeah. So
kind of mentality on that one.
If indeed that is the way it goes, then that does mean you don't get that particular effect. And as I say, it's a bit of it's a bit of a mixed bag because on the one hand you don't get that cool click, but that also means your opponent can't use it against you.
Yeah, because one thing I was thinking of too is it would be better if I had Mystics and then went within 6 range in line of fire or 5 range in line of fire. Went
Yeah. Or if you knocked Archangel down to regen, then you
Yeah.
get somebody within 5, and now he doesn't have the ability to use that regen on his turn.
That's right. It can really kind of hurt him at the most inopportune times if you're being clever and are aware of it. But aside from that, like you said, in sealed, I would probably use him just for how effective he is. Just 12 movement with running shot, 5 range with psychic blast is solid stats.
Yeah. And if you're going that far, you're probably on energy shield and sidestepping back out again. So
Yep,
great.
absolutely. All right, so we move next to Jason Wingard. We're actually in reverse chronological order, I realize, but we're just going to move on with that. Jason Wingard, also known as Mastermind, is a Brotherhood of Mutants, Hellfire Club, and Ruler keywords. His trait here, don't let the dreams of another life trouble you. Mind control. When Jason Wingard uses it as range, he may count range and draw line of fire from any character he has hit this turn, and if he hits after resolutions, he can use mind control at no cost, but only to target a character he hasn't targeted with mind control this turn. He can repeat this. So he can, mind control his way across the board. That's kind of cool.
It is.
Psionic Illusion is his next trait. There's 3 traits to this guy, by the way. Psionic Illusion. Choose a character on your sideline of 150 points or less on their highest point line. Generate a bystander printed on that character's card. Each bystander generated this way has max 1. You may activate this ability only twice per game. And then Inner Circle White King. Jason Wingard has Protected Outwit, Leadership, but may remove the action token regardless of adjacency. And then on his last 3 clicks, he's got a special defense power. My creation is reality. Mastermind, cute. Super senses.
Right.
Mastermind is super senses. He's got shape change on the first 3 clicks, perplex on the next 2. 5 clicks long, 75 points. Jason Wingard. He's not sealed worthy in a lot. He's really a sealed iffy kind of situation. He wouldn't be my first choice for sealed, but then again, being able to mind control your way through your opponent's team could be super effective. And furthermore, the Psionic Illusion could come into play. I think it's the title, Mr. Sinister, you could use in sealed that had some really strong pogs.
Yeah, you should be on your force probably, but fair.
Yeah, I mean, that said, yeah, I mean, you've already pulled great by pulling a Jason super rare. Or in the other format we're talking about later, it's more likely.
Yeah.
That aside, a couple questions have been raised about this one. It's like, hey, does it have to already be on my sideline, or can I put it on the sideline for this? And the sideline rules are you can put it on your sideline so long as you have a function for it. So if you put a super awesome pog maker like Isaac on your sideline with Jason Wingard on your team, when you're filling out your force, the reason you have Isaac on your sideline is for Jason Wingard. So, just a thought there. But yeah, he's for 75 points. There's worse things you could do in sealed, but he's not going to be my go-to. That's for sure. Mind control is always an iffy one for me in sealed because then my opponent's team has to be better than mine. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Tom?
I more or less agree. I certainly do think that because of the Psionic Illusion trait, he'll be better in Constructed, and I think he'll be an interesting choice for Constructed. But, boy, 75 points for 5 clicks is a hard sell for me under pretty much any circumstance. It's not like he's got so much defensive stuff that the Protected Outwit's going to help that much. I kind of wish his defense special was up front. I still do think he probably is a play for me in sealed, only because his range is deep enough that the sidestep plus the 8 range should be able to mind control people before they can get to him, and then you're kind of just sending them back. There's some incentive to take whoever they sent forward, send them back, and then mind control through them to get to other people. So certainly this is an improvement on mind control by most margins, but it does depend on what else is on your team. He's a finesse play for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to
certain types of players will be able to
Fantasy
sorry about that, folks. We'll be able to make effective use of it. But in most cases, like it's not a high pick, but it could be a solid include, especially with the Brotherhood Mutants keyword in there. Like there's going to be a few of them in the set. There we already know of a few of them in the set that are pretty good and could really make effective use of his leadership. So he's not just what we see. There's stuff beyond what we're getting at here.
I guess that I don't like what is it? Generate a bystander print on the card. So like scanner would count, I would think. Scanner's thing is the whole Scanner, is that her name? The one who sends forward individual. Yeah, it's Scanner.
Okay.
So they have astral scanners, and they're also mind control pieces, which is kind of interesting. So like he could create a supplementary mind controller that can go up and has 18 super senses and exploit. That's not terrible. It's I think that it's going to be hard to pull that off in a traditional sealed setting, but maybe not so hard in the team setting. We'll get more on that later.
Yeah. All right. So next up, excuse me. Mojo. Apparently, I'm allergic to him. This is one of many double base figures, or sorry, 2x2 base figures in the
Quad
set.
base.
Quad base. There we go. Mojoverse Celebrity Monster Mystical and Ruler keyword ignores characters for movement. Behind the scenes is his first trait. Mojo can't be targeted by opposing characters 5 or more squares away. His next trait, more action. Ratings are dropping. Whenever a character misses all targets of their attack, give Mojo a board token. Free. Remove 2 board tokens to either place Mojo anywhere on the map or make an attack. And then special movement power, which is scattered throughout the dial. Keep the cameras on them. Sidestep. When an opposing character uses sidestep after resolutions, Mojo may move up to 2 squares. He comes in at 250, 175, or 75 points. He's indomitable. He's a giant. He's got 7 range. Tom, what do you think of Mojo?
I'm really looking at the 75-point dial when I talk about him. My mind is very much in sealed mode right at the moment, and even though that is mostly because of the fact that that's what we're rolling into come Worlds. From a constructive perspective, I don't think that he's an easy sell at any point value. I think 100 points for those extra 4 clicks that can be fairly easily psychic blasted through are not that helpful. Even if they do have to get within 5 to do it, it's not like it's that hard to do. And frankly, I'd rather have the TK to start. So I think he's most playable at 75 regardless. And I think particularly from a sealed perspective, I'd rather start with the upfront TK and Perplex to crank up someone's values, send them forward. If they, miss their attacks, then you get a board token, and sooner or later you should be able to use that board token to reposition or to make free attacks, which is great. He's somewhat safe because people are going to be forced to come to him. If for no other reason than the fact that he's got 7 range and other people need to get within 5, then he's not, unless your opponent really has a lot of reach, then there's a good chance that he may be able to kind of force them out and use the rest of the team to get at him. Otherwise, he can just perplex his own defense, get up a little bit closer, and hope that the 19 holds. I don't love him, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think of something interesting to say because he's a little bland, in my opinion. I don't think that he's by any means bad. I think a decent player will be able to get good use out of him, but I don't immediately see a great big empty hole in the meta that he's jumping into.
You know what he's jumping into? Everywhere on the board on any team I play, because he's wherever he wants to be with the number of things I miss.
Oh yeah, get to team up with Starro in the Starro fights, and he'll have never-ending ones in no time.
Pity though that movements and attacks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate you can't do them both because it's the same free action to do the one or the other, so you can't just do them one after the other.
Yeah, but yeah, he's definitely. He's playing on my teams. All right, next up, Mr. Sinister. Now this is the Danger Room Mr. Sinister. There's a couple characters in the in the brunt of the non-colossal figures that are not prime but kind of have this B unique thing. Whereas in the colossal range, that's where they threw primes. So there's actually
three or 4.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing, but I thought it was a cool cool trick that they used. And And in this one, we have Mr. Sinister with the Marauders and Robot keyword, ignores hindering. Elevated. Ignores hindering for line of fire. He's got the Danger Room Construct trait, which we've seen in Magneto, but we'll repeat again. When Mr. Sinister makes an attack after resolutions, give him an error token for each one in the attack roll with the maximum of 3. If Mr. Sinister has 2 or less error tokens, characters take a maximum of 1 damage from Mr. Sinister's attacks. Mr. Sinister takes a maximum of 1 damage from opponents' attacks, and he can't be healed or chosen for Mastermind Protected Pulse Wave on that trait. Lessons from the Danger Room, Mr. Sinister is his second trait. If Mr. Sinister is KO'd by an opposing character for the rest of the game, that character has protected Outwit. His special movement power in his first 3 clicks, Sinister Schemes and Logistics Processing, Phasing Teleport, Sidestep Stealth. And his special damage power, Outwit Shape Change. He's 40 points. He is unique at the super rare level. So, my kind of takeaway that I'm less excited about this than I am for Magneto. Magneto, I kind of looked at him as an alternative to the solution that we have with Professor X. Being, he's got high stats and can deal 1 damage to at least with Psychic Blast to 2 targets with a huge attack value with Running Shot on a call-in. Which, gives us room to be able to say put the new Colossus Prime. That was kind of where my head was at. That said, there's nothing wrong with throwing this guy in a SEAL team when he's taking 1 damage at a time with Energy Shield with a 20 defense. Because if you get those error tokens off, he's going to start doing 3 damage at a time. And the error tokens don't stop his poison from working, or his outwit from working, or his shape change from working, or his phasing sidestep stealth. And for 40 points on this, and a 7 in a lot of cases is a hit, and that's a 6 and a 1 in some match or in some roll outs or whatever. So all in all, the more and more I look at these guys, the more and more cool they seem. But they're not part of my constructed team. They're more part of my SEAL team because they take up such a small part, but can do so much individually for so little. So I might be overblowing it, but I feel like there's some potential in this 40-point, 20 defense at range dude.
If you're overblowing it, then if you think you're overblowing it, then buckle up. I'm not known for hyperbole, but I am going to say this is, I think, the single best piece that I have seen yet from this set, and I think it is the most must-play that I've seen for Sealed, unquestionably, for Team Sealed, equally unquestionably, and I think he's got room in Constructed. I wish he was 50 rather than 40 points, but nowadays 40 does have a few good call-in options.
Oh, yeah.
And he is so unbelievably well protected as an outwit piece. And we're going to, I keep saying, we're going to get into this later. We're going to get into this later. We are going to get into this later. I truly believe that outwit is the most valuable power in this set as far as Sealed and Team Sealed playing is concerned. I think that this set, more than any other, is one that has that perfect combination of tons of really potent powers, especially on the defense side, and yet not outwit protection on the vast majority of the people who have those powers. So that combination to me makes outwit incredibly valuable. This outwit, I mean, good luck. Stealth, ESD, shape change, he only takes 1 damage per, so you've got to hit him at least 3 times through all the above. There's no reason for him to ever make attacks, so he's likely not going to be going off of his error thing until you manage to whittle him down to his last couple clicks. Once he's on his last couple clicks, he's got shape change and invincible, and at that point he might as well start going on the offensive, and once he knocks out those error tokens, and he's going to be a huge problem. And by that point, like, if your opponent still manages to finish him off, they've put so much effort into taking him out. It's unbelievable they've put that much effort into a 40-point piece. And so that, plus the fact that, as you pointed out, his poison is not, he doesn't care about making attacks. He can just go up and poison to his heart's content. He can do it through a combination of sidestep. Well, he can't sidestep first, but he can use his combination phasing sidestep to get exactly where he needs to go. He's, again, I can't say this too much. He is so well protected for everything that you get. For 40 points, he's an absolute must play. He's a must own. And I can't say enough about how excited I am to have him in the game.
You know what? You're right. I'm sold actually a little bit better than I initially thought. These guys are actually starting to look a lot better than I've given them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're super good, but this one
constructed for them.
Well, this one's crazy because this one doesn't have any incentive to attack. Like Sabretooth and Magneto, they're great, but they're particularly great as either call-in batteries or as sort of small damage attackers to take out colossals until such time as they have to play like a normal person. But Mr. Sinister changes the game altogether. He never wants to make those attacks. He just wants to call people in and be a disruption with poison and outwit until you're absolutely forced to deal with him, or I mean, maybe you're not. It's a very cosmic heavy meta game at the moment from a constructive perspective, and so that does potentially mitigate his value at this particular time. But this game changes fast. 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the line, he could be a staple, and I think that's amazing.
To add, he is so good at outwitting, he can actually outwit stealth. Ignores hindering, folks.
Absolutely.
Everybody get a shot.
Just crazy good.
Yeah.
Love this guy.
All right. Whew. Next up, Bastion, kind of bringing us down for Mr. Sinister because I'm a big fan of the villain that is Bastion, but I never get the one I want.
This was the point at which I stopped reading the comics. I was just, it's too much. Operation Zero Tolerance finally knocked me out for a little while.
It kind of broke you, eh?
Yeah.
Because you see, this is the look for Bastion. I was looking at this one on the comic book page cover, fighting Machine Man here. That was the Bastion I wanted, not the Nimrod-looking one. Anyway, that's my little point of contention. Bastion is a Sentinel, Future, and Robot keyworded dude. It is my resolute belief that X-51 is better suited for the role of Executioner. Your Executioner! It gives him mind control, but only to target, haven't seen this in a while, friendly or opposing characters with the Robot keyword.
Sweet.
Oh boy, has it been a while since we've been able to do this.
Friendly mind control!
The Mutant Eradication begins. This is his next trait, which gives him leadership. Hey, robot with leadership, a discussion we've been having for a bit. When Bastion uses it and succeeds, instead of the normal effect, you may generate a G002 Sentinel, which is there's a 3-click 2x2 base Sentinel. When generating the Sentinel, roll for its trait, determining its starting click. If an opposing character has the X-Men or Brotherhood of Mutants keyword, Bastion succeeds on a result of 4 to 6 when using leadership. Better get those ID characters off the board. Automated force fields is defense power. Impervious. Barrier is free, but only to generate markers in squares adjacent to Bastion. Shucks. These markers block lines of fire drawn to characters that can use great size. He may still target through them. Tom, what do you think of Bastion?
He's a lot to take in. Let me, because this is actually kind of the first time I've looked at him. So if maybe you take the lead, I'll jump in.
Okay. This is a situation where, once again, I want to like him more because I love Bastion as a villain. Like, he's part Nimrod, part person. And everything about that, I think, is a cool idea for a villain. But and his defense power is cool, but he doesn't have it where I want it. He doesn't start with it on any of his dials.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not playing a one-man army Bastion. That's just not me. And I looked down to 100 points. Traded leadership on a robot keyword is still good. The ability to mind control my friendly robots and make them more effective is great. And it's just I'm spending 100 points for a utility character versus making my team more utility or getting extra uses out of my characters individually with Bastion. And I feel like that just doesn't 100 points feels like a lot to spend on utilitarian, whereas most of the robots are going to be moving with him are going to be less points than that. That aside, you pop off an energy or a mind control on one of your own dudes, make a move and then attack, and then you can call in somebody with an ID card is a potent possibility when it comes down to it. So there's a lot of potential in Bastion. I just wish I had to invest less in him is kind of where my headspace sits. But a guy who makes dudes, he's soft. I'm soft on him on that. Makes extra actions. Like there's so much to like about him that I'm probably going to try something with him. But it's hard for me to want to make the investment in what the package that I have here is on a robot team. Tom?
Okay. I've had a chance to kind of soak this in, and I just don't see it. I do think it's great that you get 8 clicks of life for 100 points with double damage reduction all the way down and an end dial that is big pulse waving. That's cool, I guess. It seems like there's a whole bunch of if onlys here. the defense power is great if only he started with it, or even like pushed once onto it. But there's no feasible way to get to your third click in any reasonable amount of time besides taking damage from your opponent. So as long as your opponent knows anything about your dial,
He
they're
is
going to.
colossal. You could colossal stamina.
Yeah, what I guess I mean by in a reasonable amount of time. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna be several turns in by the time you've got there. A savvy opponent, we're assuming you're against a savvy opponent, is going to kind of see what's going on, and once you start taking the damage, they'll pour it on and knock you right past it. Or you just won't take that chance, and then they won't hit you until they have a chance to take you out in one go. So again, yeah, I wish he started with it. Impervious is better than invulnerable, and so it would be great if he started with his impervious. I like the fact that he gets to generate figures, but those figures still cost 25 points. They're 2 clicks deep, very easy points for your opponent. So if you happen to be able to get the leadership and generate some sentinels at a time when they're really going to be useful to you, then great. But otherwise, they are a liability points wise. And mind control friendlies is great, but it is limited to robots. So a lot of stuff that's just a bit too conditional, a bit too specialized for me to really like. Even though I do like the sheer clicks of life per unit point, but that's about all I can say. It's nice.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Vange Whedon. I don't know anything about this character, by the way, other than the fact that it seems to share a last name with Joss.
Yeah, I know absolutely nothing about it. I should look it up.
Yeah. I think the last name is either a coincidence or an homage, even, because Joss Whedon worked on X-Men for a brief amount of time. All right. So this one's got X-Men, animal, and monster keywords. Draconic Metamorph. At the beginning of the game, you may turn Vange Whedon to click number 25. Her starting click doesn't change. Special attack power. Distract them with the claws, hit them with the tail. Blaze Claw's Fangs. When Vange Whedon makes a close attack and hits, after resolutions, deal 1 damage and give an action token to another opposing character within 3 squares and line of fire. And then special defense power, which she has on that starting click. Human until splashed by blood. Vange Whedon is normal size instead of colossal. When Vange Whedon or an adjacent friendly character would take damage, they don't take that damage and instead turn Vange Whedon to her starting click, Protected Pulse Wave and Outwit. So it's kind of like its own little protection thing. She comes in at 275, 175, or 75 points. Indomitable Colossal flies. Obviously, it isn't Colossal until on that little base or that little dial, and is 6 range. So, Tom, what do you think of Vange Whedon?
Very interesting. I kind of like the optional activation click. I think that for 75 points, there are lots of occasions where I might want to be on that optional activation click because you can be carried. Remember, you can carry multiple base characters. I got that wrong the other day. You can't TK them, but you can carry them. Yep. And having an extra outwit is probably going to be useful to your team, especially in this setting, as I've alluded to before. So outwit goes a long way. I like the fact that you can push yourself to get off of it if you absolutely need to, and because you become colossal, you can follow up that push with colossal stamina if you then are so inclined to do so. Otherwise, hopefully you're annoying enough as an outwitter that your opponent just wants to deal you the damage. It does put you in a bit of a precarious situation because they can then try to plow through your dial, but they could do that if you were on top dial as well. The 16 defense up front isn't going to be any real negative because you're going to land on an 18 no matter what. And that's cool. So I think that's only useful in the 75, and this is actually one of the few occasions where I would think long and hard before dismissing the higher point values, specifically the 175, because you do get quite a bit for that 100 points. You get 6 additional clicks, and you get an opening dial that is better in pretty much every way. I think that the running shot energy explosion will go farther, or just a straight up running shot with 4 damage. And obviously, Shape Change and Impervious is a much better opening defense than just the 18 Invulnerable is. So she's kind of useful in both of those cases. I think 275 is only for giant games and novelty. But she's decent. I wouldn't be sorry to see her in my pack, even though I don't think from a competitive perspective there's any real chance of me putting her on the board.
I'm of a similar and different mind on that one. I remember an old feat card called Protected that costed 8 points. And when I used Protected, I took an action token. This one, when I use Protected, I get a dragon. Granted, I spend a lot more points on it, like 67 more points on a low end for it. But all of a sudden, you made an attack, I'm not taking any damage. I'm bringing a dragon out. So
True.
if you have a character that you really don't want to take that first damage, or you want to force an extra attack on Vangeline instead, this is a good way to attract it, I think. Granted, if you do it, you are losing 75 points of initial starting attackers. So you got to be making sure that who you're protecting needs to be protected. Mm-hmm. Somebody like Archangel would be a consideration in this case for me. You know, have Archangel carrying this around. It's like, if you're going to attack me, you're going to have to deal with the dragon coming out first before any damage gets taken. And
yeah, that's true.
I think that's an important element to be aware of with this. It's
yeah, I kind of forgot about that piece. That's a good point.
Right? It's not just her who takes the damage. It's whoever she's adjacent to also takes the damage. But it's also easy to trigger in the sense that, like, okay, I'm going to pop you with Incapacitate. But it's also any time they would take damage. I'm wondering if that gives you a... No, yeah, I'm not going to start to talk about other possibilities of ways of taking damage. I don't think it will work for unavoidable, but either way.
Well, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, you can't avoid unavoidable with it, I'm sure. That's the whole point of unavoidable damage. Yeah. But certainly you can, when somebody would take Mystic's damage, you can instead turn your buddy into a dragon, or, when somebody would push. That's the way I read it anyway, because pushing isn't unavoidable. Oh, no, pushing is unavoidable. That's why that lockjaw trick works, so, okay.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, I'm going to take Mystics. I'm going to take Dragon. Mm-hmm. That's how I read it nowadays. All right. That said, I think that's the last of the previews for X-Men. And we move into the preview that myself and Tom, I'm pretty sure, are way more excited for.
Wait a second. You're right. So pushing doesn't work because she's got a KO click there. So.
Yeah.
That's annoying.
Indomitable.
So she cannot push herself.
Stop on Earthbound?
The Earthbound gets rid of the willpower part.
Okay.
So yeah, you could incapacitate her straight to death then.
Look for incapacitate.
That's
sealed only.
That's a hard sell all of a sudden. Okay, good point, Jason. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Wait. Amber in the background forgot she was there, and she just sneezed and scared the hell out of me. All right. Since I'm a little jumpy, let's get a little jumpy in the ring with some WWE powers. So this magazine page made its way across the internet, courtesy of a player who we shared the name of in our Facebook, and I have forgotten his name. He's a wonderful human being for sharing this. I'm going to find it right now. His name is David Larison. He initially shared this on the HeroClix International Trade and Traders and Collectors forum. So thanks for sharing that out there. Anyway, I'm going to address the chat in a second. I started looking at the chat. So this is from Game Trader Magazine. I believe this is just all of the powers. They're just a couple move and attack powers, which is, thank God, not too heavy on extra powers. And I think we have enough in defense to really cover what we would need. But we'll go over these one by one. And I know I shared a lot of my thoughts on Into the Mind of Madness earlier this week. So most of this is going to give Tom a chance to kind of react to this. But we're going to go through all the powers, describe what they do, and then just briefly chat about how we see them. The first one is movement power, an orange circle. It's called Flying Leap. Power, ignores hindering training characters for movement. Move up to 3 squares, then make a close attack with +1 attack. If this character started adjacent to 2+ ropes, also modify damage +1. And that's it. That's what the power does. So it's an extra attack, 3 move square ahead of time that ignores characters and hindering terrain. And then if you happen to start next to 2 ropes, which I believe is some combination of like blocking and characters.
I don't think characters are ropes, are they?
I don't know what the rope count comes.
I thought it was basically hindering terrain by any other name as ropes.
It might be too. I'll have to take again. We'll need the actual proper PAC for this. So
yeah,
grain of salt on that one. But yeah. So what do you think? What do you think of Flying Leap?
Well, I mean, it's better charge, which is exactly what it's trying to be.
It's limited range, better charge.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't move as far as charge does, but it gives you a +1 attack, it gives you improved movement, and it gives you the possibility of extra damage. So That's cool. I mean, it's a nice addition to what's already there, but it is a bit limited. The fact that it's got a locked range of 3 squares is certainly a relevant consideration in the competitive game where modification is king. It's going to be a lot harder to make that work when you are at a locked movement in order to have it happen. So there's that to be considered about it, but otherwise, I think that it does what it's supposed to do. It's a nice little way of getting away. I mean, I think that this is the old logic that says you don't have to attack something in order to charge or whatever. You don't have to attack something in order to use flying leap. So if your character is at fear of being locked down, this is a great way to take a power action and ignore characters just to get out of there. So you can use it to attack, or you can use it as an escape route, and I think that gives enough functionality to make it a good addition to and an adequately unique addition to the game.
All right. Next up, Slingshot, which gives a character using it knockback, but you may choose a direction and can knock back characters with charge and combat reflexes. Free, make a close attack targeting an adjacent character that this character knocked back this turn. I'm still have a few questions. I'm not sure if this works in conjunction like something with the influence ring. So I don't think you can give a character influence ring with Slingshot and be able to move the dude around in any direction and also ignore charge and combat reflexes. I do believe it has to be from this source pack. I'm not 100% sure just yet. So questions need to be asked about that.
This doesn't I haven't checked the PAC in a while, but obviously this doesn't simulate the effect of Force Blast in any way, really, right? Because in order to have knocked them back, you still have to actually hit them.
Yes.
Yeah.
This one is strictly like it gives you the ability to knock back, but you still have to make an attack in this case.
And are you considered to have knocked somebody back even if they moved 0 squares?
Yeah.
So can you knock them back into yourself so that you can just turn this into a version of Flurry?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of cool. I like the fact that it's knockback that deals with charge and combat reflexes. In a lot of ways, that's actually my favorite thing about it. Otherwise, like I said, it seems like Flurry with a bit too much complication to it. But it's adequately different. That again, I feel like it's not a bad addition to the game. So, cool.
Mm-hmm. I hope that at one point it still works in conjunction with the influence ring in one way, and it's the fact that like you said, it's almost like a free action Flurry. And if I got you against the wall, bash into wall, you take 1. I attack you, you take more damage plus get bashed into the wall. There's a lot of potential in that manner of it. It can be manipulated in a way that we kind of like. So.
And I do like the fact that the close attack is a free action and not something that happens as part of the same effect. So you don't have to find some funky thing where you shoot somebody from range, knock them next to you, and then immediately have to attack them. Like you can do a thing where you knock them back into a wall and then either sidestep up or get carried up or whatever it takes to get into position to be able to follow it up. That adds some utility to it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next up we have lightning speed. Which is power, ignore characters for movement, move up to 3 squares, then make a close attack, then move up to 2 squares.
Yep.
Yep. That's
yeah.
it.
I don't know what to say. I think I prefer flying leap if I'm going to do an improved movement, ignore characters, move 3 squares to make the attack. I mean, yeah, this one does move you away afterwards, but I get +1 attack and potentially +1 damage with flying leap, and I get to ignore hindering terrain with it as well. In this case, again, like it's fine, but I'm pretty non-thrilled. I can't. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but once again, I like the fact that it gives you an ability to break away for free.
Yeah.
Get away from those walking woods. I don't care if I attack them or not. I just want to get away from them.
Yep. All right. Speaking of trying to get away from the walking woods, this one we've known about a little bit. I think we've talked about, so we could probably be brief about this. Nimble, which passively ignores hindering, and breakaway +2, and then also has the ability free move up to 1 square.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's differently good as compared to sidestep. Doesn't go quite as far, but ignores more when it does.
Yeah. All right. I think my big thing about it is I feel like nimble should be on more characters going forward because I think there's more characters that should have nimble than should have sidestep.
I guess, but I don't know if they're going to carry this over into the general.
I don't think so either.
I hope they don't, considering the whole rule about you have to play a WWE character in order to unlock the WWE rules. They'd have to throw that out the window, and it's already kind of a weird rule, so I hope they stick with it.
Yeah. All right. So next up we have reversal, and I screwed up in my handwritten one, so I'm gonna have to look at a different thing for it. Anyway, adjacent opposing characters have breakaway -2, so kind of like a light plastic or its own plasticity rather, not light. It's just full blown. Excuse me. Free. This character has been given no actions or only a move action this turn. Make a close attack targeting a character that missed this character or failed to break away from this character since your last turn.
I think we'd seen this one before, hadn't we? Isn't this one?
We might have. I don't think we've discussed it in detail.
Okay. I mean, it's cool that it's a lockdown. I'm not sure why reversal is a lockdown effect, but okay, whatever. It's what is it? Make a close attack against a target that missed this character or failed to break away from this character. Yeah, okay. It's cool. I like the fact that they make it hard to break away. The only, obviously, there seem to be a lot of ways of ignoring characters in this particular pack, so I wonder how much is going to really apply. And with the breakaway -2, it's often not even worth trying. Like I almost think that the power itself would work better if it didn't have the reversal -2 in it, because more often than not, if you've got the breakaway -2, I should say, then you're going to either outwit the power and get away, or you're going to get TK'd away, or you're going to get carried away, or you're going to knock them back, or you're going to ignore characters and just move away. So in a way, I feel like you get more mileage out of it because there's almost no temptation to ever even try to break away as long as you've got breakaway -2. But all the same, it's fine. I just don't think it's going to come up very often.
Yeah. For this, I think it's going to stop a lot of those nonchalant free action sidestep breakaways. Because I do it all the time. It's like, oh, you got plasticity? Well, I need a 6. Let's see. Okay, well, I didn't roll the 6. It was worth a shot anyway, sort of situations are going to stop. It's like, okay, well, if I do this and it fails, I'm about to get punched in the face by this guy. Maybe not such a good idea.
It's cool that also applies to if they miss the character. So someone tries to shoot you, they miss, then run right up next to them and attack them for free. Great.
Yeah. Oh, you missed me throwing that chair at me. Ugh! All right. Next up is Slam, which gives close, make a close attack, and after resolutions, choose one, give a hit character an action token, or place a hit character in a square adjacent to this character.
This I love. It's not super. It's easy to remember. It's functionally straightforward, and it performs a great function. I love the fact that it's sort of like quasi stunning blow, or quasi vault. I think it was whatever the other one was that allowed you replacement. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of situations where I kind of look at it and go, I could use an extra square for range. Well, let me see if I can get that extra square for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Or 2 squares in some situations, because it's adjacent to the character that's making the attack. So if you go to the opposite side of where they are, let's say diagonal, you've given 2 squares of extra distance there. Sorry, my camera's autofocusing right now. So I think that's also another effect that could go a long way. But of course, who doesn't love giving a second action token to a dude who's already got an action token? Even if it doesn't give him pushing damage, it takes a turn away. So, all right. Next up, Stun. When this character hits one or more characters, it says 1+ characters. A hit character modifies attack and damage -1 until your next turn.
Oh, that's really nasty. I love it, but it's nasty.
Yeah, it's brutal, and I love everything about it. And
that's great.
Yeah. Last but not least, one of my favorites actually, a submission hold. Free. If this character hasn't moved or been placed this turn, deal 1 damage to target adjacent opposing character. Both characters gain immobile until your next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better poison and true lockdown. It's pretty crazy that it just happens. it's not even conditional upon them taking the damage. So if they're toughness or invulnerable or impervious or whatever, it doesn't matter they didn't take the damage. They're still immobile. It's just a bit limited insofar as you can't have been moved or placed before doing it. So
Which
it's
is the
going to
same
be.
limitation as poison.
I know, but and poison as a result is a lot harder to really pull off these days. This one is one that you really, I think, are afraid of. So you really, the very fact that there's somebody who knows a submission hold on the map makes you change the way you're playing, and that forces your opponent to a decision. And I think anything that does that is a good thing for the game. So,
Yeah.
very good.
I also love the idea of somebody with a submission hold with a remaker ring.
Hmm.
I poison, and then I submission hold.
Now, to be fair, no, to be clear, this isn't all, is it? Because I'm assuming that because they're different colors in the speed and attack slots, that there are other speed and attack powers still to be seen. Do we know that for sure or not?
I don't know that for sure. The article kind of made it in its own way seem like this is all there is to it, but I don't want to like say for sure that's the case.
But that would be weird, wouldn't it? Like you've got a black circle on speed, and you've got no corresponding black circle on attack, and you've got a dark green circle on an attack, but no corresponding dark green on speed. Like it seems like odd choices if they're not gonna stick to their guns from a color perspective. But they are still gonna have some overlap.
At the same time, I think they need room for growth in this, especially for the wrestling fans, to see if they gain more wrestling fans, and then start to add more on that. It could be just like its own wrestling Clix is kind of its own start zone to get wrestling fans in, and then as they grow into the game, they kind of add these extra powers and they start showing up at tournaments and start to realize, there's a lot going on here that I'm really being able to use effectively. So,
I guess, but I mean, they could do that and still have the same colors on all of their slots.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
who knows?
But then it also almost would increase the size of the pack by one of each color per slot.
Oh, no doubt. Like it's not that I want more powers. It's that I don't understand why they wouldn't have been consistent in the way in which they chose the colors that they did. So I mean, who knows?
I mean, if you actually look at it in a way, Flying Leap is the same color as Leap Climb, and it's kind of its own little mini version of Leap Climb. That's the version we all wanted for the Leap Climb.
You're right.
Shot its own Force Blast and its purple lightning speed, kind of like Hypersonic is brown speed. So
your thing is going to fall apart when you hit Nimble. But otherwise, I agree. I think there's something to be said for it. And like you said, like that holds in the attack slot as well. So maybe that is what they're getting at. But even then, stun has nothing to do with smoke cloud. So it's just really weird.
Yeah. And reversal has nothing to do with super strength, or nimble has nothing to do with stealth, but slam has something to do with incapacitate, and submission hold has something to do with poison.
Yeah. I feel like we're jumping at shadows here.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, is stealth really a thing in pro wrestling?
No, it is not. But I mean, by the same token, nimble should be pink.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot like sidestep.
Exactly. It's some weird choices being made, and there may be more, but I don't think there is, and I think this is a good starting point, to be honest.
I don't want there to be more. Let me go on the record here and say I don't understand why they're doing it the way they're doing it, but I don't want an entire second pack. If the 4-4 rule continues and we wind up getting a total of 16 new powers, like that's enough. Do we even know if there are damage and defense powers? Have we seen any of those on the preview dials yet?
No, nothing, nowhere, no how.
Oh, okay, so it is possible. This is literally all the new powers.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. Now, there's one last thing which will lead into our next topic, which is Team Worlds. But I did remember I talked to somebody about this. I had to kind of briefly cover it.
Sure.
Now, Mr. Clix Fix, who's in the chat right now, how you doing, bud? He had Howard Brock on his show recently. I put a link to the episode down below. If you started watching from the beginning, you're gonna have to refresh because I had to update the info and settings on this. But
I'll click it myself.
Yeah. That said, a couple of conversations topics that he had with Howard Brock was in regards to competitive seal. And now Howard has, of course, got the ears of WizKids, and when he has a conversation with WizKids, there's serious things being considered when these conversations are had. This is why, when I say this is not out of the blue. Oh my gosh, this is a conversation that important people have had. And in discussions, Howard has talked to rules makers and rules deciders that the idea of increasing the number of packs for team sealed events. In addition, for his own sealed event, he ran a mulligan system where you could like change the packs that you got and go from there. So the idea was for 3v3, the Team Worlds format. This is not this year. This is like a next year sort of situation. So in the future, the possibility of turning 3v3 from 6 packs per team to a full brick, just a sealed brick. Just throw a brick on the table. Yeah. It's 4 extra packs between 6 players, but it's also a sealed brick, so we kind of know there's certain things about distribution that are to be expected from that, which we'll get into that conversation in a second. The other idea was the idea of mulliganing, like you get 2 bad packs for base sealed, you want to mulligan for 2 more. You do have to pay for them as kind of an option. I feel that's more of like a full-blown mulligan is more of a casual thing in my eye. But if you do want to kind of improve the consistency of sealed, I've always thought an extra pack fixes the entire problem. I think a 3-pack competitive sealed kind of just goes, we go from 10 slots to 15 slots. There's more variation. There's less chance for a complete bad, where if you get 1 good pack, you can really save your pool, I think, in that matter. Now, that aside, what are your thoughts on the matter? We'll talk sealed, then we'll go to team sealed quickly.
I mean, my gut reaction. I have to check your gut reaction a lot of times in this game, and in life, because as soon as somebody proposes something that changes something you like, your instinctual reaction is to want to defend the thing you like, and say there's nothing wrong with the way that we run teams. I don't think there is anything wrong with the way they run teams. I think replacing it with a brick does no harm except cost, but that's not. It also, to me, doesn't do enough benefit to justify the cost. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, like, it's one of these things where I think that there's comparatively little gained and comparatively little lost. But because the most notable loss is money, and the most notable gain is variety and variation when there already is a pretty massive amount of variety and variation. Like, I wish I could remember the numbers now, and I may have mentioned it on this show at the time, but when we were preparing for US Nats, then I put together a few like sample polls, and just for the fun of it, I tried to figure out how many different possible combinations of 3 teams one could have pulled from those 6 packs, and the number was astronomical. I don't remember what it was, but it was in, if it wasn't in the thousands or tens of thousands or something. Like, it's one of these things where the number goes incredibly high when you think of all the possible variations of that was 30 figures of different values that would add up to approximately the right number of points. Like, it's a hard thing to do the math on, and it's very much dependent on the particular packs you pulled, but at least there is an overwhelmingly large number of choices, and at most there is a astonishingly large number of choices. So I don't think anyone could make the argument that 6 packs to 3 teams is not enough to pull a respectable option. Now, I absolutely agree with the same point that has been raised about sealed ever since day one of sealed, which is that some people are going to get better pulls than others, and that some teams are going to wind up with better things than others, and that's just the nature of sealed. Yeah. You could give every team 10 bricks, and you'd wind up with some that happen to find the right combinations of things. I mean, 10 bricks might be a bit extreme, but you know what I mean.
I get where you're going.
You get where I'm going, right? Like, there's going to be people who pull better than other people, and I get the whole thing that, you know, you're not going to, a sealed brick, you're not going to get 2 red skulls. So great, you're not going to get 2 red skulls. Yeah. But I just don't think that's enough incentive in and of itself to justify the fact that it's going to cost more money, and you're still going to get asymmetrical pulls in terms of some people having better stuff than others. It may not be the specific thing that happens when specific pieces get pulled more than once, but that's all you're getting, and I just don't think that's enough. So I'm not sold, but it's not, again, I can't say that I'm not sold because I think it's a terrible idea. It's the worst. It's more just like you're not gaining very much. And if you're not going to gain very much, then why are you charging me for 4 more packs?
Where I also kind of see things is sealed is set dependent. About 80% of the feel bad moments is actually a reflection on the set. And I want to go to Avengers Defenders War as an example. You missed that particular Team Worlds with myself and Mike, because it was the 2 of us and George Masu. But I think there was
You traded up on that one.
we didn't use 4 figures from our entire pulls. Like that's how much of the stuff that we used out of the 6 packs that we had, and that was its own kind of feel bad moment. But that was more reflective of the set. Whereas when we played Secret Wars Battle World between you, me, and Steve, and we went on a tear with one super rare between the 3 of us, with another super rare that we pulled just sitting in the pile, with a pile of figures that we didn't use.
Well,
right?
to be fair, even in the Avengers, like I know this doesn't support your point, but I think it supplements it a little bit. Even in the Avengers Defenders War example, yeah, there were 4 pieces you didn't pick, but it's not like you built the only 3 teams that were an option. Like there were a lot of different ways to combine the pieces that you had, or even the ones you didn't have. So there's still tons of variation.
Absolutely. That aside, so sealed, 90% of sealed feel bad comes from the set. Because I think Secret War, Black Panther Illuminati would have been a nice Team World set to go. I'm happy with X-Men. I am happy that it's going to be X-Men. That is awesome because we're all missing our pre-release weekend to go to Worlds.
I'm happy-ish.
Yeah,
we'll talk about
it. So that aside, there are like super strong uncommons in the set, like the Thor as an example, who's like a really strong uncommon in the set. There's really good supportive commons in the set, and like, I mean, look what the nonsense I pulled it at the WKO with the Hood and Ebony Maw. So, that said, I don't think Sealed needs the extra 4 packs, but I'm not against it. You know, like like you said, I don't think it changes it enough. And again, there's still going to be those instances where one team pulls 2 chases. The power of the level of a chase is again dependent on the set. Yeah. Tell me,
that
have a
can't
problem with somebody pulled 2 chases and Joker's wild.
Well, the argument is that can't happen if you gave everyone a sealed brick. Like no one would pull 2 chases.
Yeah, but
short of a collation error.
Even in the 6 pack, again, it's a matter of like the set is super dependent on it.
Right.
Go ahead, pull 2 Joker's wild chases. Tell me that made you the win.
Yeah, exactly. Like if anybody had been playing, what was it? It was it was Black Panther Illuminati. If anybody's been playing, they pulled 2 chases, and those 2 chases were Red Skull and Starbrand, then no one would be complaining. No. So not only do you have to pull 2 chases, but you have to pull 2 specific chases. And yeah, that did happen, and the team that pulled it won. That team is also like the Ohio guys, who are one of the best teams in the game. So you can't claim
made the Devil Dinosaur.
Right, you can't claim that that's because they had great pulls. Great pulls help them win. They're one of the best teams in the world of HeroClix, and like Howard is a great example because he was in the same situation. They pulled incredibly well. They're also amazingly good players. Yeah, so you can't take the one away and just look at the other and say, look at the problem.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you give God tier players God tier pulls, expect them to do pretty well.
Right, and it's going to happen. Yeah. Even if they're not double chases, it's still going to happen at a 1 brick. It's just going to be a mother of a good brick.
I've seen chases pulled and players didn't make top 8.
For sure.
These kinds of things occur. But I've also seen, played across from a chase with a stack of commons, uncommons, and rares, and just fought my way out of a win. Thanks, Iron Goblin.
I don't know. I've won with chases. I've lost with chases. I've beaten chases. I've lost to chases. Like there's more to it than that.
Yeah. And like I understand a bad pull feels bad. I think the worst feelings come from single sealed. I don't think I've ever kind of looked at my team sealed and said we can't pull something off with this, and we have almost every time. And what I like is that some sets have better junk for me to work with than other sets.
Well, and are we going to get into that later?
Yeah. And Emily kind of clarified that they used the mulligan rule for a 2v2 event, but it was an all or nothing sort of mulligan.
I must say I don't like the mulligan rule.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't know why I don't like it. I like any rule that puts everyone on more or less the same footing. The argument against it is that you're never on the same footing when you're in sealed. And my counter argument to that is that the mulligan rule doesn't solve that issue.
No.
You can you can pull something that's equally uh, poorly suited to what you want to get at, and in a way, it feels like we don't want HeroClix. It's like it's already pay to win enough at the constructed setting.
Hmm.
Uh, Sealed starts to start resembling that if you just keep on buying other packs and stuff. Like we've done it lots of times locally and casually. The warehouse does it regularly. It allows you to just switch out a pack altogether by buying a different one. I just don't care for it. I've taken advantage of it, sure, but to me, it's not the spirit of what the game is. And admittedly, it's hard to argue that you love the spirit of Sealed when your pulls are junk and you go 0-3. But that's HeroClix sometimes. I
Yeah,
don't know
man.
what to tell you, man.
There's a feel bad moment. That's why I kind of to go in the spirit of the mulligan, where it's like you're trying to take away that feel bad level. I feel like an extra pack helps increase the pool of thought, where you get a little bit more to kind of put
Yeah,
together with things, and you might be able to squeak something out a little bit better.
an extra pack, I think, is fine. Just make that the tournament.
Yeah,
Everyone pulls three. Everyone pulls three.
I 100% agree, and would kind of push for like, hey, if you're gonna run a sealed WKO or a rock sealed event, I think it should be 3 packs instead of the full blown mulligan. I think everybody kind of feels good in that level, and like some guy, too many people kind of focus on the high rarity and don't kind of look at it and go, well, we can pull off a win with like I heard somebody taking a crap on the Spider-Man rare from Secret War from Black Panther Illuminati. Come here and say that to my face.
What? Well,
I'll fight
I
you.
mean, stupid people gonna be stupid, right? But
But yeah, so that aside, I don't think a full blown mulligan answers that problem, and I think just one extra pack kind of. I mean, it's the whole level of the leftovers, and I people hate I do this all the time, but if I use Magic as the example, a straight up sealed pack or sealed deck Magic format, I get 6 packs, which gives me a total amount of 90 cards, and I'm building a 40 card deck of which 20 are lands that 17 to 20 are about lands that I pull from a stack somewhere else that aren't in this pool. So I'm really only using about like 23 cards from my pool of 90.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is its own different game, but add that extra pack in for sealed, for competitive, and I think everybody feels good. If it's a release day sealed, mulligan all you want. But if it's like
Yeah.
Rock, WKO, WizKids kind of sealed, I feel like if you really want that bad feeling away, a mulligan isn't going to be the thing that solves the problem.
No. If you've got to go big competitive, like if they started to reintroduce the notion of sealed as one of the things for the major qualifiers, then by all means do a 3-pack sealed. Just try not to complain too much when someone still pulls better than you.
Yeah.
That'll still happen.
It's going to happen. Somebody is always... Here's the thing. When you pull sealed, somebody pulled better than you. Accept that and play better than them.
Exactly. No, if you're like, unless your name's Kyle, then somebody always pulled better than you did.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sealed for you.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of sealed, let's go. We wanted to talk about this. Team Sealed is coming up. It's one of our favorite formats, Tom. I think it
You
is
bet.
our favorite format. I think we're the 2 biggest evangelists for it.
I don't think we are the 2 biggest evangelists for it. I think that, but I do. It's our favorite. I think it's a lot of people's favorite. Like the more
Yeah.
you talk to people, the more that is the drone note. If there's one thing I've kind of learned about this game, especially in the last year or two, it's that whether they're vocal about it or whether they'll just sort of tell you if you ask them, just about everyone seems to agree that Team Sealed is just the cat's pajamas.
Oh, I love it so much. All right. So before we start sharing stratagems, what is your favorite part of the Team Sealed?
I mean, I think we've talked about it before. I'm going to go over it again because not everyone needs to go back and listen to us week to week. My favorite thing about Team Sealed, I don't know. There's so many things. I mean, in short, it is everything around the nature of the camaraderie of the game. I've tried over time several different attempts to create camaraderie in a HeroClix setting. Battle royals are one interesting example where there are many people at the table, and although they're all kind of fighting for their own, success or whatever, it's a more casual setting, and it's kind of fun. It just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't feel like HeroClix. Sometimes you do actual like team up events where you'll have 4 people on a board and 2, a team against a team, and that's all well and fine, but it still isn't really You're not independently strategizing your way through. It's a great marriage of still being HeroClix. You're still going one-on-one against an opponent and all the great stuff that attends this game that we love. But there's an added dimension that you are doing it on your behalf and also on behalf of the guys who are next to you. And you have the ability to share each other's victories. You have the opportunity to commiserate with each other's lack of success. And when one person drops the ball, the other two can pick it up. When everyone drops the ball, you can all kind of commiserate together. When one person wins, the other two lose, then you can kind of say, "Oh, we know who the real champion is here." Ha ha ha! Let's joke. It's that type of thing, right? Like that's the fun of teams is that interaction and interplay. It is so much more of a social experience, and what winds up happening is I wind up being much more social and much more well connected with the people across the table from me too. Like everyone gets along better in this setting because we're in the mode of thinking beyond the purview of the end of our own nose, and I love that about it.
Mm. Yeah, camaraderie is a big thing about it, and I like. It feels like it feels more constructed than normal sealed. You know what I mean? Like it kind of feels like it's bigger. So, you know, and the pool feels awesome. You can really build more. Like just the building of it is a little bit more contained, cohesive, as people will say. So, and you also start to find out who everybody is in sealed. That's another thing. We're like part of that camaraderie is we start to find out who each of us are as sealed players, and I think that's one of the greatest things I see, specifically in the team that myself, Tom, and Mike have. Though there's often a frequently different person amongst the team.
By this point, we've all played lots of different at least certainly I have. I've played on lots of different versions and variations, and I think you have as well, of different combinations of people. It always kind of works, but it's a nice change of pace. Being with people you don't know is a great way to get to know them. Being with people you do know is a great way to get to know something different about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that said, let's get into strategies of it. And I kind of want to address what we just kind of tiptoed around is the player archetypes and how Team Seal tends to form in itself. I kind of see it, the way I see it, is when you build with 6-packs, there is always one obvious team. Like, almost nine times out of 10, there's one team that's like, this is a team, there's no question about it. And then there's going to be a second team that's like, this is pretty good. We might be able to split up parts of it, but for the most part, this is a really solid, good, decent sort of team. And then there's the rest that somebody kind of has to tool around and make. Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes there's 6 or 7 different builds. If we were to look back at our Secret Wars Battle World, specifically from last year's Team Worlds, when you mean Steve were building, we had your team, which I felt was obvious, but then we had like 2 or 3 other builds that we could definitely kind of go around.
Yeah, I mean the thing about my team is I don't think it was themed, and it was only obvious insofar as it was stacking things that already work well together. Like you take a really powerful piece with prob and you give that piece another prob and a taxi. So, it's obvious as far as trying to, stack up make your powerhouse even more powerful. But there's also something to be said for spreading the love around on the prob front, so that you could go a couple ways on it. Like you say, there's often I don't think that in that case any one particular team stood out. One thing that did affect, one thing that maybe we'll talk about it a little bit, but it's nice to talk to your partners beforehand. And we had been talking to Steve, and he had specifically said, like, here is more or less the team I would love to see. It was a police-themed team, and he named a few pieces, and they all happened to kind of be in the ones we pulled. Like, not verbatim what he said, but like 80% of what he said was what we happened to pull. And so in a way that one jumped out as well because it happened to be top of mind from having already talked about it. That was a happy coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So player archetypes in a group of 3, what do you usually see? You can stick to us, you can talk to other things you've seen, but how do people tend to act as players?
Well, do you mean like what sort of teams do they like to play? Or are you saying what kind of archetypes are there?
As players, like Okay, you know what? I'll just lead out with our team.
Yeah, explain by example.
With our time. With example, Tom, specifically, is the sit back and kind of listen to everybody and add criticism or additions to it, which is a good person to have on the team because there's 3 voices. You don't want to be fighting over all the number of voices that we're going to have. And then there will be the other 2 who are like in our group is often myself and Mike, where we're building away. Like we're just coming up with all the different combinations and moving the figures around, and then eventually we come down to the 3 teams, right? And oftentimes there will be one player who's like, I am playing this awesome team. It is awesome, and I think I can pilot really well. And then a guy like Tom will put on a team that is definitely strong and something that Tom will be able to play. It's a lot about comfort level. And then there's the Jason, where my focus is I want to build 2 awesome teams. And then I'm going to take the rest of this, and I'm going to build something. And everybody's going to look at me like I've been drinking and it's only 11 in the morning.
I guess.
I probably have been drinking because it's 11 in the morning.
That's truer in some cases than others, to be fair. Fair. Like this, sometimes it's build 2 teams and have junk. But if there's not, again, if you can't come up with the obvious, then you create a balanced 3. Yeah, right. So I think you kind of go both ways.
Yeah.
I think that as far as archetypes are concerned, one thing that should be noted, and you alluded to it, there are some people who look at the figures and say, what can I play? And it's not even specifically what, a certain style of team. It's like, what am I excited to pull? So there are people who are thinking about it very sort of, I'll say maybe selfishly, but not. Selfish is a bad word because that's an implied pejorative, and it's great when you've got, again, there are so many possible combinations of figures out there. If somebody really says, boy, I really feel good about doing this, then I say go with that. Like if they feel good about it, there should be plenty of else on the table that you can build with that can come to your own satisfaction. If they really feel that passionately about it, that good about it, then that good feeling will carry them. Hopefully, I say let it be. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It helps thin the options a little bit.
Yeah, and always be aware that everybody's got a comfort level, and you do have to affect that as well. Because to go back to last year and years previous, we came up with 3 teams. And then we all kind of sat there and went, all right, who's playing these?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And it's kind of why I call myself the junk guy. Because I'll pick last. Because I will play any old jalopy any day, anytime. I don't.
Well, and of course, like, Mike will... It's funny. Mike has a real affinity for dogs, and he will kind of act a bit like a puppy when we're talking about teams. As in the one that he obviously wants to play, he'll kind of say, "Oh, you know what? I'll play anything. Like anything's good. Like I could play that one." And he sort of leans towards the team that he wants.
Mike, hopefully, we'll be back next week.
But I'm not knocking him. It's just sort of the way we all kind of are. I probably inhabit something similar. Like
I'm just going to kind of jump in there. Much like Mike, I have pride in playing the junk.
Yeah,
There's a level of pride.
Yeah, well, and it's also a level of there's a level of unwanted pressure in playing the quote unquote good team, because in a way it's like you're at that point you're expected to win, even though that's not really the way this game goes at the best of times. So you'd rather pull a rabbit out of a hat rather than win every race because you've got the fastest car. I mean, every now and again you're going to break down, and then you'll kind of beat yourself up for it. It's also just not your style, and that kind of segues nicely into not only are there archetypes in the building process, but it's a good idea with your team to discuss in advance a little bit about how everyone likes to play, so that this game, there's room for everybody, and there are definitely those who like to play a tentpole type strategy, who like to play a one-man army type strategy. There are those who like to play kind of a two-pillared strategy, so you've got sort of 2 principal movers and shakers and just whatever else is around it. There are people who like swarm teams, there are people who like balanced teams, there are people who like teams with lots of options, pick a power effects or pick a dial effects or those types of things. There are those who want to deal as much damage as possible. There are those who are happy to deal less damage as long as it's done in a strategic fashion. And to be fair, most of the better HeroClix players are capable of playing a number of these different strategies. So it's not just a question of you're never going to have, or you're very rarely going to have somebody that says, I will only play tentpole. But you have to kind of be honest with yourself and say, what do you feel most comfortable playing? Like, let's set ego aside.
Hmm.
Don't say, never say to somebody, what are you going to win with? But just say like, what do you most enjoy playing? And I honestly think, Jason, you don't enjoy playing with what would probably be the best team on paper. I won't get too psychology about it, why that is, but I think
I
that
got
you.
pride.
Oh yeah, I mean you don't like it, so that's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to not like, to follow whatever sort of the obvious thing is. And it's best that you're honest about it rather than being like, oh yeah, I'll totally take this, and then you get up in your head about it, and that's going to affect your play. So be honest with each other, set ego aside, and say, what do you like to do?
Yeah, that really kind of covers it. So we've now talked about being the people and
Hmm.
being the thing. Um, Now we kind of have to talk about that extra element, the X factor. Now,
Hmm.
literally
Hmm.
being the set itself, and just a sealed mindset. When you, this is one of those things I don't think enough players kind of go. I know a lot of players do this. They come in those mindset like, can you imagine if we pulled this chase? Can you imagine if we pulled this super rare? Stop looking at those figures.
Yeah.
Because those figures are your dessert, your cherry on top. You need to kind of look at the lower rarity. Trust in the lower rarity and understand the lower rarity to see the strength of the set. Because uncommons and commons are going to be pulled plentifully. Some multiples. Especially in the common slot, you'll see a lot of commons like, oh, I got two of this, two of this, two of this, right?
Yep.
It's a thing to, that's the thing to be kind of looking at and saying, where's the strength in this, and then kind of look at the rares and super rares and the high rarity and go, can we do make something with these be better?
And this segues interestingly into what I was saying earlier when you mentioned that this Uncanny X-Men was going to be the set for this. I start I had a hunch that something was the case, and so I did a bit of number crunching. I don't have charts or anything here to show you, but I do want to tell you what I came up with. We haven't seen the whole set yet, but we've seen a pretty substantial portion of it. Notably, we've seen out of 25, we assume 25 colossals. I guess maybe actually there's a few primes in there, so I think it's actually 28 total. We've seen 21 of them. So that's a pretty healthy portion of the overall. And we have seen, let me just do a quick little count here. We have seen of the main set, um, 44 pieces out of something like 50 or
I
51.
think the number
There's
is actually 80.
Well, that must be including colossals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying
sorry.
single base characters.
Okay, yeah.
We've seen 41 of, including the A's and B's. It'll be a little over 50. So again, we've seen most of the set at this point. We've seen maybe about 80% of the set. It's enough to notice some pretty major trends. So here's a few things that you might be interested to find out. Number one, this is the first set in Recollection where there are no single based figures so far that have multiple starting lines. The only thing that sort of accounts for that is the Human League or whatever those guys are called that
The
have
Friends of Humanity.
yeah, the Friends of Humanity who have a 5 or 10 point line. They barely count considering like that's 5 or 10 points. But they're the only ones who have any sort of point variation at all. So if there are 50, 52, 53 single based figures in the set, if this trend holds, that's 52, 53 options. And we're so used to seeing single based figures with multiple starting lines, it actually winds up being slightly less in terms of the options for building than you may have had in another comparable set where there are more split starting lines. Now, we're going to make up for that when we get to the Colossals, and I'll get to that in a second. But of that, we don't have a bunch of starting lines. We've seen 41 pieces. The average point value of all the pieces that we've seen up until this point, single based, is 56. That's the average point value. And that's real low. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
Avengers, Defenders, War, Joker's Wild level lowness
Yeah.
at the moment. You don't even hit a 100 point figure until you hit the rares with random. You don't exceed a 100 point figure so far unless you pull the chase in the single based category. And almost everybody else is at, 75 is high. If you're at somewhere in the 60s, then you are on the higher side. There are tons of 50s and tons of people who are even lower. So there's a lot of lower point figures in the main sets here. It leads itself, and coming with that are a bunch of short dials, and that marries itself in a very sort of frightening way with a whole bunch of extremely high point, extremely high damage figures that are coming out on the colossal side.
Yeah.
They're not exclusively high point, mind you, but here's an interesting stat. We've seen 21 figures so far. I counted how many of those figures have at least one option at 150 points or more. So basically, they could be half your team or more. And the answer is 20 of 21. So this, the generic Sentinel at 33/25 points is the only one we've seen so far that doesn't have at least one starting line option that has the ability to be a tentpole for your team. So then I went one step further and said, okay, how many of them have at least one option that is 200 or more points? And that is 17 of 21, which is 81%. So what that basically means is that if the stat holds as the last few previews fall into place, it is almost a guarantee that in 6 packs, you are going to get 4, 5, or even 6 pieces that could be upper point tent poles or one-man armies in their own right. This is probably going to be the tent poliest sealed and team sealed set that we've almost ever seen. And that comes coupled with the fact that a lot of those pieces do enough damage to KO a lot of the other smaller figures in one shot. And they also have very long dials. The average cost per click on the Colossals is 19 points. That's a bit richer than the average cost per click on the single bases, which is about 11 points. But when you consider they all have these 150 plus point lines, I looked at the other pieces in Modern Age just to see what is the average point per click for pieces at 150 points or more. And it comes out at about 24 points. So at 19, that is substantially less, which means you've got way longer dials per unit click than you're generally used to. So all these tent poles we're getting have deep dials, and all the single base pieces generally have low damages. So it's going to be very hard to get through them. This is the reason why I'm not. This is a hard set to take for a test run at Worlds.
Yeah.
Because the usual logic, especially for us, is, build tent pole if you must, but it's not what any of us prefer. We would rather have 7 pieces because usually
X-Men says you must.
right, like it kind of, because we prefer to have 7 pieces because usually with 7 pieces you can out action your opponent and whittle them down.
Yeah.
This one might be such a kind of an extreme split that your 7-piece team is going to last 8 rounds, 1 round of immunity and 1 round each while each of your figures dies. So it may be very hard to climb that hill in this set with so much in it. This is actually considerably more severe than Avengers Infinity was, because I did the same sort of checks on Avengers Infinity and said how many of the Colossals have 150 plus point starting option. Only 68%. A reminder, we're at 95% for X-Men. Only 68%. Because so far.
What, like, if there's 20? We said 28 is the likely outcome of the number of Colossals we're going to see.
I think 28 or 29. Yeah.
So that number at best can become 70 something, like 75.
Like if not a single one of these happen to have 150 or more point line, which is profoundly unlikely, but if that happened to be the case, then you'd be dealing with about the same actual percentage, because it would be in the high 60s, because you'd be at 20 of 28, which is slightly more than 2/3. So yeah, you'd be around 71%. So it's going to exceed Avengers Infinity then, even if none of the other previews have high point options, and I think we all know that they're going to. So presently, at least, the way it's trending, it's much higher, because you got to remember, Avengers Infinity had lots of like low point vehicles and like relatively low point generic figures and stuff. There were just a bunch that were like that, and so in that way, and also I checked how many had a 200 plus point option, and only 60% did. So compared to the 81% that we're at now, this set is looking tent-polier than Avengers Infinity, and that's kind of scary because that was a pretty tent-pole set in and of its own right.
Yeah.
Now, this is a whole lot of talking. I want to drive back towards my fairly simple point that I brought up way earlier in the show. The one thing I didn't do the metrics on, but I can tell you sort of anecdotally is a big difference. Avengers Infinity had a ton of pieces at various different point lines. It's the best possible comparison to this set. But one thing it definitely had was it had a boatload of power cosmic, and this set sure doesn't. Of those colossals, very, very few have any outwit protection at all. Which means outwit is super valuable because when you're dealing with a set that is full of deep dialed characters, that you've got to try to carve through their massive damage reduction and all those clicks of health. Your biggest friend here is going to be making their impervious go away through the activation of one free action power. So if you're playing in this set, look out for outwit on the opposite side of the table, and any outwit you can get on your team. I would move heaven and earth to try to do it personally, and that's why I think that Mr. Sinister is such a clutch play, because he's an outwit that's very hard to take out. But I think outwit's going to go a real long way in a set like this. That's my rant.
No, that's a pretty good solid point. Now the bonus is that every group of 6 is going to have 6 of these massive dudes. So you do have options. You're not all of a sudden like, oh no, what are we going to do? No, you got lots to do. You got lots to work with. Lots of space, and given the percentages, you're very highly unlikely to not have one of the pieces that you need to kind of bulk up. Yes, a lot of these teams are going to be 10 pulls. We kind of have to accept that and make peace with that. I've now officially made peace with that, but I don't mind that because I'm still going to find some way to make an 18-figure team.
Well, I mean, there's also a lot of retaliation, right? So, like, this is the other side of that coin, is that a lot of these pieces have really low point options as well, and I think there is a fair amount of variation you can find within it. It's just that it's a very tempting thing to put 175, 200, 225 point piece on your force and say, okay, you got 45 minutes. Try to get through all of this.
Yeah,
not easy.
So, that aside, did you run the numbers on how many low point figures have outwit aside from?
I didn't get that far into it, I'm afraid. Okay. So I'm interested to find out. I mean,
yeah, we'll have to run those numbers next week, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and see what are those figures you want for Team Worlds and whatnot. Because I think at this point, Constructed, we've talked to death, and this is a format that needs the most conversation.
Yeah, it really is, and get your probs in there, build your themes if you can. The other thing about a tentpole heavy meta is very often first hit wins. Sadly, that is the sort of the nature of a tentpole-y sort of game. So make sure that you get that first hit. So get those probs, get those perplexes, and use them defensively until you have the opportunity to use them otherwise. Do everything that you can to stack the deck in your favor in the early game, because unlike a lot of times, this is not going to be a game that's. I think a lot of times the games aren't going to be decided at minute 40. I think a lot of them are going to be decided at minute 5.
Yeah,
we'll see. Just my theory. I could be completely wrong.
I mean, they could also see minute 40, even though they started at minute 5.
Well, that's what I mean. They're decided. That's why I say they're decided at minute 5. They may not be over at minute 6, but I think that it's going to be too much of an uphill climb after that first huge hit. Means their tent pole has crippled yours, and now it's just sort of the never-ending process of mopping up.
Mm-hmm. All right, just gotta love when you run the numbers, Tom. It makes me feel so good on the inside.
That's what I'm here for.
If there's nothing else, I guess we can start moving to the questions portion of things.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, and before we do that, I want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/MadeWithClix. You guys are our favorites. You open up your wallets and help us a lot, and that helps us keep these channels going and helps us improve things like this beautiful camera that I've now decided to attach to this instead of just filming games with.
It looks much better. I was going to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you. It's really hard to angle Balor in there now, so I miss him already. Now we're going to start in the Discord, which is where our patrons get to hang out, which is one of many perks, including our patron hangout, which this next month in September is actually happening on September 1st, because that is the only day we can do it. I am not trying to run it through hotel Wi-Fi. All right, but first, David C. in our patron Discord wants to know what happens if he hits Mystics on... okay, so he's talking about, what's his name there? Van Zweden.
Archangel?
Yeah, Archangel.
Yeah, he dies.
Yeah, he dies. You have a bad day. So charge someone else.
Correct. But you can't.
You can't?
You must attack that character.
I missed that part of it. Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's why
Yeah,
Archangel is such a liability. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't... You just kind of sit there and go, no! No! You actually charge backwards and rely on your energy shield and then sidestep away a bit, too.
I agree.
All right. So next we move to the Facebook. The Facebook. Just give me a second here. Get out of that. About. I had some questions, and one of them was even important. And by important, I mean monumental, because we love this guy. Where is it? I gotta get it. Oh. Oh. It's been so long. It's buried in things. It's buried in HeroClix cards. It is Chris Starkhouse. Oh, it's a official episode, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I missed you, Chris. And the stamp has missed you, too.
That's right.
All
The
right.
all-important
But
Stockhouse stamp.
He wants to say, thanks for the advice last week. I'm very much looking forward to 3v3 Worlds. What maps are you looking to make sure you bring for Team Sealed with his X-Men set full of figures with very diverse abilities? Well, the way I'm seeing it, and the way as Thomas has already explained it, the WizKids office and the Underground might help if you get stuck with the team that doesn't quite have the power in the Colossals, because Colossals are limited in range when you bring them indoors.
I would go hedge maze if we're talking about taking your small team against their big one. Although that may backfire on you if they've got a lot of range. So
Yeah.
you want both an indoor and an outdoor option at that point. I think Underground serves well in that respect.
Yeah. The WizKids office is just always my go-through because I do like the rubber map sometimes, and it's cool.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting point. Like I'm trying to think about it and dissect the question a little bit, because you do want to have a team or a map where you're going to be able to shoot at them and still be able to position yourself fairly well. Like if you're heavily reliant on Colossals, you're probably not going to want the hedge maze. If their Colossals are primarily close combat focused, which there are a few that are, hedge maze is not a bad one to have on hand for them. Remember, they can Colossal reach over to you, but they may have difficulty getting around because it's hard to get around on that map. And if you've got the ability to stay back and shoot at them, then by all means do. Otherwise, I think you're right. I think Underground works slightly better for just you being able to outmaneuver them as compared to the office, because there's so many more. The thing you're going around is blocking squares as opposed to walls. But I think they're both good calls in that respect. I also often forget, but shouldn't overlook the cargo ship, I believe is what they call it, because that's one where you've got lots of centralized blocking where you can kind of try to stay away from those close combat Colossals, but still have enough wide open space for your Colossals to get through. So if you've got some ranged Colossals and a bunch of close combat guys that need to be somewhat protected from the more close combat oriented Colossals that you're up against, then that's a map that you can kind of do it in. I don't know. What else? What do you think?
I think we got it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming Flashpoint Flood is not legal, right? Because that was one of the ones that didn't carry over. I think
Sorry, one more time?
I think Flashpoint Flood is not illegal, right? Like, because that was one that wasn't part of the approved map list.
Let me double check on that one.
I'm trying to think of maps that severely restrict movement for those who don't have improved movement. Because if you happen to be up against a swarm of smaller guys, they may very well have difficulty getting around if you're able to lock down on a map that has tons of different changes in terrain. And so just sort of outlast them or outrange them.
Yeah,
and
the only rock map that wasn't legal was National Air. But which is the water one you're talking about? Because the Trenches is legal, but...
Oh, the Trenches is legal? Trenches is brutal. Trenches is actually a great example of what I just said. If you've got a Colossal team with lots of range, I think the Trenches would do very well for you, as long as you're choosing it in situations where you're not outranged by an equally adept rangy opponent's team. But if they are relying on small moving close combat pieces and trying to sort of sneak up the map and corner you, they're going to have a real hard time doing it on the trenches if they don't have the ability to get across more quickly. So I always like having it as an option. Trenches can be a real disruption. So that's a good one.
Great Mound.
Great mound, yeah. Great big giant mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard to know in that one because, again, in a colossal heavy setting, they'll always be able to see you and you'll always be able to see them. But at least it does make it a little bit more difficult for the smaller guys to get to you.
Yeah. It looks like the Flashpoint Flood is not legal anymore.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oof.
Oh, well.
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to forget it now. The actual Black Panther maps
I got
had
open
two.
here.
Yeah,
Great
what are...
Mountain Necropolis?
Necropolis is the one I was thinking of. Necropolis is an interesting call. If the benefit of a fairly mobile team, or some fairly decent range running shot or some hypersonic, Necropolis is an interesting indoor-outdoor where you may be able to get some nice lines of protection, and that's one where you might be able to close in on your opponent. If you're able to just sort of outmaneuver them, I would keep that in mind. I feel like at this point I'm just naming maps, so I don't think I'm really helping. But I think that there's a lot to think about, and he raises a good point. Don't overlook the importance of that.
Yeah. Sorry, I was dealing with a troll in the chat.
Oh, good. That's cool.
That means we mean something, right? When people start trolling the chat.
Sure. Yeah. Something.
Oh, something like that. All right. Next up. Aries Edge wants to know if anything cool is going on at Worlds this year.
Yeah, it's Graceland.
Yeah, it's going to Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah. You get to do tours and stuff. And...
Yep. But I think I know what Aries is alluding to, and I'm trying to put something together. I'm trying to do a little bit more content filming that is not just some massive, like, I'm going to try to make a biography. That fails every time I try to make a documentary because I've lost all the footage of my previous one I was working on.
Ooh, all right.
Which came from a hard drive failure. Thank you. Actually got to remove that hard drive from my computer and do something to it disgusting and mean. But I got to talk to some people at WizKids to see if we can arrange this as well. Just because of the way battle royales are set up, I'm going to have to ask certain permissions and certain requests and make specific pleas to the right people. So, but Aries is somebody who's going to be involved in one of those things, and it's going to definitely be viewer discretion advised for sure.
Very mysterious.
But I gotta find two other people. It's a battle royale I'm planning, and it's just a certain breed of person I gotta get in on this.
Cool.
All right. So that said, we move now to the chat. If you're live with us in the chat, oh my gosh, you guys have been busy. Capital letters questions so that I can see your questions.
I'm sure it's filled with corrections. We'll go back later and figure out all the things that we said that were wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, some of those things, or some people kind of picking up on things just as we were saying them, or we're really good at like going back and saying, no, I said this thing, but I have to correct it here. So, for instance, there was a conversation about when we were talking about Van Sweden, where
I think I mentioned you would push, and that's not a thing. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, she can like push because she doesn't have willpower because she's got Earthbound on the single click thing.
Yeah, but she dies.
Yeah, exactly. She would die to willpower. That's what we're talking about. So I covered that.
Yeah.
There are some comments about the idea. There's conversation about the multi-pack thing. Honestly, these are all like hypotheticals. And like one of them is like, hey, a third pack would increase the price. Well, so would a mulligan. Mulligan would double the price for anybody who's taken the mulligan, right? So
I'm all down for not increasing the price, but it's hard to convert somebody who likes sealed into how we could make it better by making it more expensive, because it doesn't feel like anything justifies making it more expensive. Yeah. So we're hard sells though. We love sealed. Not everyone does, and I respect the fact that there are those who don't, and you want to kind of make it as much for everybody as you can within reason. So thankfully, I don't have to make that decision. I just cast my opinion into the sea.
Ricky Yell wants to know when to expect the Everyman format recap. That was my bet on Thursday. I'll try to squeeze it into the Mind of Madness this Thursday. because I don't do Everyman for Everyone anymore, because I just got drowned by the Pauper format that became more popular than the Everyman format, which is cool. All the power to those guys. I don't like kind of get excited about it or do a show about it anymore because I don't want to take attention away from a format that's on the same level and is doing very well. So I just wish they would find a name that isn't already Magic's name.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for a little bit of uniqueness in here at Clix. All right, but that's about it. So not much left in the chat. So last call, Tom. Anything you want to say before we sign off for the night?
Nope. A lot to think about. I got to start printing fake dials. I don't know how we're going to practice Team Seal for the set when the set hasn't released yet, but we got to do something because I'm feeling a little rudderless, and I'm interested to try to get on point because I got to make it into Worlds.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got to do that.
Right.
Well, I will do my best then to help you out. Because last
Cool,
year
man.
that was my big thing, but I guess I gotta. I was in relax mode, and I gotta get out of relax mode because we gotta work for you, Tom. Because myself and Mike are in there, so we gotta work for you.
Rock on.
But yeah, so on that note, once again, thank you to our patrons over at patreon.com/Clix. If you want to join, check us out. Any valuation gets you access to the Discord and the Patreon Hangout, which we're having September 1st. We also want to take a second to thank our sponsors over at majesticccg.com/ check out the Apex Insiders. We got the page right here. It's open. You go to the Apex Insiders. $3 a month gets you access to articles on this portion of the site, which will include articles from people who've won tournaments, done very well in tournaments, great minds in the game of HeroClix, including Adam Friedman, Steve DiCarlo, PJ Bolin, George Masu, Daniel Powell. All of these are really good players who've done very well in the game, and they have a great share of minds. In addition, if you don't have the $3 per month, of course, MajesticCCG.com does have tournament results and lists all kinds of cool stuff, including their Bronze Age format, which they've been running at their store for a little bit now. And check out Aries Edges, or by his real name. Your real name's on the site, Aries. An article on trade etiquette in online trading, because it is a thing that we all kind of have to improve on at all times. I mean, just people as people have to improve on their etiquette for stuff like that. But tick tock, time is coming. Worlds is around the corner. Team Worlds is around the corner, and one of these is really hard to practice. So practice, guys. Get some practice for your constructed teams. Practice by looking at the figures in the X-Men set at hcrealms.com. Go to the forums, go to the general conversation, and go to the upcoming sets and rumors. The list of what has been spoiled for X-Men is there, so you can get a look at, so you can improve your decision-making on this set. All of this counts as practice, and practice will make your teams better. Have a good night, everybody.